Hi, I am Sam Yogi. In today's podcast, we'll continue the talk that J. Krishnamurti gave at Alpino, Italy on July 9, 1933. And we will also discuss what he had to say. J. Krishnamurti. Thus, as long as there is conflict, there is memory. That is, when your action is born of incompleteness, then the memory of that action conditions the present. Such memory produces conflict in the present and creates the idea of consistency. You admire the man who is consistent, the man who has established a principle and acts in accordance with that principle. You attach the idea of nobility and virtue to a person who is consistent. Now, consistency results from memory. That is, because you have not acted completely, because you have not understood the whole significance of experience in the present, you establish artificially a principle according to which you resolve to live tomorrow. Therefore, your mind is being guided, trained, controlled by the lack of understanding, which you call consistency. Okay, now let's understand what K or Krishnamurti just said. So, as we delved into in yesterday's podcast, there is conflict when there are barriers like tradition, prejudice, fear, security, authority, or postponement. With any of these, or one or more of these, within these, one has to act when these barriers exist. When one gets limited by such barriers, action gets limited or conditioned by one or more of these barriers, leading to incompleteness of action and thus conflict. Unless one is aware choicelessly of this incompleteness of action and thus conflict, this conflict establishes memory with the regret that the action could have been complete had there been no fear, no authority, no prejudice, no tradition, no lack of security, or what have you. Such memory props up an ideal, a resolve that one must consistently live from then on according to the ideal, whatever the ideal may be. For example, one may resolve that one will get up at 4 a.m. every day because otherwise one is not being able to get one's work done, which is leading to incompleteness of action. One then starts getting up consistently at 4 a.m., and after a while, one may like it because one may be able to do more work in the morning. Thus, one may establish in oneself the virtue of consistently, or the virtue of being an early riser. Or if one cannot do that, one may admire someone else who consistently gets up at 4 a.m. every day. What K suggests is this: one has not understood the whole significance of experience in the present and how it leads to incompleteness of action. One has not understood that one is acting within the limitations of barriers like fear, prejudice, authority, tradition, security or lack thereof, postponement, etc. That is why one props up an ideal and starts worshipping that ideal. One starts living according to that ideal, which one calls consistency. This is how the principle of consistency gets established in oneself because of a lack of understanding of one's life in the present. Okay, now let's continue with what K says next. Krishnamurti. Now, please don't go to the other extreme, to the opposite, and think that you must be utterly inconsistent. I am not urging you to be inconsistent. I am talking of your freeing yourself from the fetish of consistency which you have set up. Freeing yourself from the idea that you must fit into a pattern. You have established the principle of consistency because you have not understood. From your lack of understanding, you evolve the idea that you must be consistent and you measure any experience that confronts you by the idea that you have established, by the idea or principle that is born only through the lack of understanding. So, consistency, living according to a pattern, exists as long as your life lacks richness, as long as your action is not complete. If you observe your own mind in action, you will see that you are continually trying to be consistent. You say, I must or I must not. Okay, so briefly, K again touches upon action which is not complete. Now, in the previous podcast, K said incomplete action arises when mind and heart are limited by hindrances, which we just discussed, by barriers. Again, these hindrances or barriers are the barriers of security, authority, fear, postponement, etc. If mind and heart are free, then you will meet every experience fully. But because they are not free, and because most of you are surrounded by barriers, since you have these barriers, you naturally act within them, and therefore you are unable to act completely. So, consistency cases, living according to a pattern, exists as long as your life lacks richness, as long as your action is not complete. Thus, you say, I must do this, or I must not do that. I must not do this, or I must do that. And that gives rise to consistency. Okay, now let's continue with K and what he says next. Krishnamurti. I repeat that this idea of consistency is born when you do not meet life wholly, completely, when you meet life through a memory, and when you constantly follow a pattern. You are but increasing the consistency of that memory. You have created the idea of consistency by your refusal to meet freely, openly, and without prejudice every experience of life. That is, you are always meeting experiences partially, and out of that arises conflict.